It just starts like, oh, there you go. There are
All right,
things
it's
now.
alive.
Oh, we have people running in.
That's interesting.
All right, guys. Apologies for the delay. We were having some technical difficulties, but we are all here now. So thank you for joining and thank you for making time. My name is Chris. I'm a product manager here at Platform 9, and this is one of our recurring Ask Us Anything sessions. On the phone with me today, I also have one of our lead engineers, Arun. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hey, everybody. Great to have you all on the webinar today. My name is Arun. I've been at Platform 9 for quite some time. Love looking at Kubernetes. We've been following Kubernetes from its nascent times, and looking forward to discussing things with you today.
Excellent, excellent. We also have some people from our support team online. If you'd like to ask questions, please feel free to use the chat in Zoom or Slack. There's an AMA session channel there. So we're able to do that. I think you can also ask to speak within Zoom if you want to ask a verbal question. That's easier than typing. We just ask if people are going to request to speak, make sure that you remute yourself afterwards. And we like to try to keep a little bit of time open for everyone. So we try to help as much as we can, but we also want to make sure that we answer everyone's questions. So if we unmute you when we're having a chat, we might cut short if we have other questions coming in at the same time. So with that, I think we're going to jump in. This AMA session, as we call them, is completely unscripted. We didn't start this one with any particular topic. So Arun and I thought we would actually start by just sort of jumping into our latest release, which is live on our free tier, where we've introduced a new Helm service running in our SaaS management plane. So I'm going to click share my screen and give everyone a quick overview of what we're added recently and how they can use it. So, and if people have questions, right, anything in the sphere of Kubernetes, if it's simple about storage, about networking, ingress, load balancers, connecting things together, please do ask, right? So, share screen. All right. So, for those of you that are, I guess, unfamiliar with Platform 9, this is our platform, our SaaS management plane. You can sign up directly from platform9.com. It's completely free. You can run up to 3 clusters with 20 nodes in any combination that you want in our free platform. And you can do that across your bare metal, VMs, Azure Cloud, and now EKS. So when you log in, you'll land on this dashboard page. Obviously, if you have nothing, you can immediately just click Add Cluster, and it will take you to the Create Cluster workflows. If not, you can come into the infrastructure dashboard, and you can start building clusters from here. So as you can see, I already have 3 clusters running in this environment. One of the things we added in 5.1 recently is the ability to import existing clusters. So if I click Import, we've added the ability for EKS, and you can step through this wizard to very quickly come in and attach any of your existing clusters from anywhere in EKS across all the regions. So you just simply check the regions that you have clusters running in. Platform's going to go and discover those, and then you can come in and choose them. If you've already imported the cluster like I have, you'll see that it's tagged as already imported. You can't import it twice. If not, you can literally just click the checkbox, click Next, and you'll have a cluster here, import, and you're done. From that point forward, you can start using all the functionality that you have in Platform 9 to manage that cluster. This cluster is one I added just previously, and you can see the version that's running. You can see the VPC setup. You can see the node groups, and you also give you the ability to deploy Platform 9 monitoring, which is pretty cool. So if we click Grafana, it's actually going to take you to our managed monitoring platform that is deployed into Kubernetes to help you get all of the Prometheus metrics you need quickly. So that's just a quick intro into the EKS pieces that we added. And I'm going to go back to infrastructure. The next piece that we introduced was the application catalog. So if you're using the platform, you're following along, the first step is to come through and add a repository. A great place to go and find Helm packaged applications is the artifacthub.io. You can search for any type of app that you want. I went and searched for Cert Manager. That's always a great one to have. And you can simply come down to the install process, which you would normally do through the Helm command line, but we've built that into the SaaS management plane. So you just take the repository URL and come in, click Add New Repository, fill it in, and click Connect. If you're attaching one of your own repositories that's private, you can use username and password authentication to connect to that URL and that repository. Once they're deployed, you'll be able to come in and use the app catalog to deploy apps. And I can see now there are questions coming in. One question: how imported clusters are built? In our free platform, the imported clusters are just part of the free offering. So we're not going to charge you anything in the free platform for bringing in imported clusters. If you're in our enterprise customer base, you can work with our sales team to understand pricing and the cost of attaching that to Platform 9. All right. Any other questions? I feel people have pretty quiet this time. I see nothing in Q&A either. No? Any persistent storage solutions from Platform 9? That's a great question. The last AMA we did was storage focused completely, and we got some great questions around there. We don't create or support any persistent storage platforms ourselves. What we do is we work with Portworx as a partner to make that a platform that's super easy to get up and running on Platform 9. As you can see here, I have a cluster that's called Portworx 1. This is a multi-node cluster that has Portworx attached to it and running as the persistent storage backend for that. We also work fairly frequently with Rook as an open source solution for using Ceph as a hyper-converged storage solution for Kubernetes. On our document site, you'll see guides for getting both of these up and running. They're pretty simple to deploy. Honestly, probably the biggest step is making sure that you've got drives attached to each of your nodes that are mounted but unformatted. So they're just blank drives. Both Portworx, Rook, and even OpenEBS will then look for those drives. In their configurations, you can specify it if you want to, but if you're just doing a very quick deployment, out of the box, it will use any attached drive that's mounted but unformatted, and bring that into the cluster and do everything under the hood for you. So that's a great way to get storage up and running. Once you install the CSI drivers for those, you can come in and start making storage classes. So that's a quick way to get storage up and running. How can service providers, so we've got another question's come in. How can a service provider resell Kubernetes? Can we deploy Platform 9 on our infrastructure and have support from you? So yeah, that's kind of two questions in one. More than happy to talk to that. So we run the SaaS management plane, and then you bring your own infrastructure. So you're then running those clusters where you want to run those clusters, which can be anywhere in the world. So the other way I can look at this question is, can you run the Platform 9 SaaS management plane? No, that's something that we keep operationally for ourselves. We can and do work with service providers that want to resell the platform as well. So that's definitely something we can talk about with our sales and partner team if people are interested.
I think one thing that I wanted to add, going back to the persistent storage question, is that if you're deploying clusters on any public cloud through storage classes, like what Chris said, you can already use the volume services offered by those clouds. For example, with AWS, you can use EBS, persistent volumes, and define your storage class in a way that gives you the ability to choose between HDD or SSD or something else in that form or way.
Yeah, and this is an example. This is actually the EKS cluster, and I created this storage class. Let's see, on the 24th of March, for just that. And I didn't do anything from EKS. I didn't have to open up the command line or anything. I literally just came in and said add storage class, selected the EKS cluster, and used the native provisioner for that. All right. No one has any questions about Kubernetes, how to do stuff? All right. If that's the case,
everybody trusts us, Chris.
Everybody trusts us?
Yes, Platform 9 can do all of that. No questions asked.
Let's I think we should have a chat about Ingress.
Yep.
And accessing applications. I think that's always a great topic.
Definitely.
So I have what we call Bare OS clusters running here, right? So these are running in our own cloud that we have. You can see that some of them have multiple nodes. In the deployment workflow for these, if I click Create Cluster, and I'm going to get a message that says I don't have anything ready. So let me. There is something strange going on today. Let me click refresh. So I'm going to delete this cluster just quickly, and then we can go through the create cluster workflow. The reason I want to do that is I want to talk about MetaLB, and then what happens if you don't deploy that, but you want to access applications on a single node cluster or a small multi-node cluster that is running on a VM. So that cluster is off and getting deleted. If people are ever interested, you can come into nodes and go node cluster, and you can see the nodes there. When you delete them, we actually go through the process and clean up all of the Platform 9 components on those. If you've installed anything else, we'll leave all that software alone, right? We don't go and clean up pieces of software that are outside of our control and domain. One example of this is I've installed Rook and Portworx on these nodes multiple times. If you do want to reuse a cluster that you built with Platform 9 and then added a storage platform to, you'll need to go and clean up that storage backend manually. So follow the guide from that vendor to make sure you clean it up. So I'm going to go back to clusters. I'm going to click Create a Cluster. I'm going to choose Single Master, just because that's the quickest to get up and running with. If you choose Single Master, you can't expand that, by the way. If you choose Multi-Master and want to expand in the future, just choose that, and you'll be able to add masters at a later date. I'm going to call this AMA. I'm going to choose 119. I'm going to run this on an IPv4 stack. I'm going to turn off etcd backup, but I'm going to leave monitoring turned on. We'll also be doing some sessions in the future on KubeVirt if people are interested. But what I want to talk about is this: deploy Metal LB. So a lot of applications and a lot of access to services deployed into Kubernetes are predicated on a load balancer, right, Arun? Which means when you deploy into Azure or AWS, we'll go and build a load balancer. If you use one of their services, they'll build load balancers for you. But as soon as you get to an on-premises deployment, the question is, well, there's no load balancer there automatically. So what we will do, if you have a reserved IP address range, is deploy and manage and operate Metal LB as part of your cluster and part of the service that we offer in that cluster. However, you need a reserved IP address range. If you're using VMware Workstation on a laptop, you can create a network and make that available. If you're in a VMware environment and you have access to your network configurations, you can also use an address range there. Quite often, we don't have access to that. Most of my clusters I don't deploy Metal LB with. So when I go through the process here and build my cluster, when I finish this, it's going to start, and I'm not going to have an easy way to access any of the services that get deployed.
Yeah, so I think I got dropped. I don't know where till where you got me. But just doing a quick review, I was saying there are two ways of accessing your application when it's deployed within the Kubernetes cluster. One is for other apps within the same cluster talking to it. And the other is clients outside of the Kubernetes cluster connecting to your application from outside. And the second part is the interesting part. The first one, Kubernetes takes care of it internally through kube proxy and cluster IP as a service object. But the second part, where you need clients to be able to connect to your application on your cluster, think about WordPress, CI/CD, anything that you've deployed in your cluster that you need to expose to external entities. That's where load balancer becomes a very interesting and important service construct within Kubernetes. And that's for on-prem. One of the solutions, open source solutions out there, is Metal LB, and then that's what Chris was talking about right now. Back to you, Chris.
So if someone's built say a one node cluster, no Metal LB, and they've deployed, let's say they're using the app catalog, they've come in and they're like, I'm going to add, let's go to Artifact Hub. Let's say someone wants to say WordPress, right? Bitnami is a really popular repository. When I add this, the number of charts I have is going to increase 10x. So Bitnami. This is going to attach the repository. Now, when I deploy WordPress, it's going to expect to have a load balancer, right? And what are the options for users once they've sort of deployed something to then access the application if they don't have Metal LB? All right.
Sorry, I think I was talking on mute. Yeah, I mean, Metal LB gives you that load balancer type service. The other option is to use something like Ingress. And that's especially useful if your applications are L7 in the networking terms. And essentially what that means is translates to HTTP. And if most of your calls coming into your applications are HTTP, then Ingress and Ingress Controller is a great way to implement that north-south communication. You can always slap a load balancer in front of Ingress, which gives you a little more flexibility in the networking space, but that's optional at that point. So Ingress is a great way to do that. Back to you, Chris.
Yeah. So this is the WordPress helm chart. You can edit the values directly in here, or you can actually upload a values.yaml file that you've used previously. If you've never used Helm before, this values file is basically how the application's configured. Most have a default, and a lot of these default applications assume that you have a load balancer. So when they deploy, they're looking for that service type. Many of them also have an Ingress configuration that you're able to come in and update. One of the cool things about Helm is you can actually deploy an app, and once it's running, you can just come back in and click edit, update the values file, and basically update the running instance of that application as well. In here, we will see how the service is set up as well. You can see that it's looking for a load balancer type here. Another way to deploy this is also using node port, right, Arun?
Yep. You can use node ports as well. So going back to the various service objects and constructs, there are a few in Kubernetes. One is the cluster IP, which is internal, and it can be used for apps to talk to each other within the cluster. For external access, there are a few constructs. One is node port. What that means is your service is now available on all of the IPs of your nodes within your Kubernetes cluster, and at a particular port, high numbered port. The next one is load balancer. What that does is, in case of cloud providers, you create a external load balancer, like say AWS load balancer, and that points to all of the nodes. So the backend endpoints for that load balancer are your nodes in the cluster, and that gets updated depending on the node status. So if one of the node goes down, the cloud automatically takes care to remove that particular node from the backend endpoints. And on-prem with MetalLB, it works similar. So load balancer gives you that single point of ingress from outside, and from there on, it again goes through node port and to the service. The third one is Ingress, and what Ingress allows you to do is get all of the incoming calls onto an Ingress IP. So Ingress is a service, again, running within Kubernetes. And you can define Ingress rules that say which service to route the request to, depending on a specific parameter. And one of the parameters could just be URL. The third one is something called an external IP. If you have an external DNS load balancer or external entity that is able to redirect traffic to the nodes, then that's another type that you can use within Kubernetes to route traffic from outside to inside. The one that we're talking about today here is the Ingress Controller, and how we can route that incoming request through the Ingress Controller over to an application. What Ingress allows you to do beyond that is also add authentication authorization. So you can have cert-based authentication or username password based authentication, HT access type authentication over, where the Ingress will terminate it and then send over the connection over to your backend service.
And you can map, if I was to deploy, say, WordPress, Drupal, another blogging app, I could map both of them to one Ingress controller in my cluster, right? And then that Ingress would understand how to route the requests.
That's right. And if you talk about it from a load balancer perspective, so one way I kind of say you can picture this easily is to think of load balancer as a network element and Ingress as an application element. So as soon as you say load balancer, it's network based, and most often than not, you need to create a separate load balancer object per service, which in the cloud would add to cost. So for example, let's say you have 100 services in your cluster, and all of them need to be exposed to north, south, or client-side traffic from outside of AWS, for example. Then you'd be creating 100 load balancers to access these services. Whereas if all of your services are HTTP, say you have 100 different websites running on different backends like Drupal or WordPress, then one way to do this is to use a load balancer, but then just one load balancer, and then internally map that to an Ingress endpoint, and then use Ingress to reroute traffic based on the URL, for example.
Yep. So I see there's some questions have come in. Let me see, networking activity. These are questions around the advantage of using Platform 9 on top of a cloud provider. I think that's a relevant question. So Platform 9's operation, like our SaaS control plane, right? What we're doing here, simplifying using the platform. You'll see this cluster is off and building. But you'll also see here, right, upgrade available, right? This is a 2-node cluster. And when we make a new release, if you want to upgrade Kubernetes, you can simply just come in and click upgrade, right? We'll go and upgrade the masters, and then we'll go through and upgrade all of the worker nodes to avoid an outage, right? As soon as you move into one of our paid offerings, either growth or enterprise, you have access with our support team. And what we do is we sit there and we proactively help to manage and operate your clusters with you. So if you have a question around the cluster, the architecture, the design, or even a problem with that cluster, our support team is there to help you operate Kubernetes successfully, so you can just run applications and not have to focus on being an absolute guru on Kubernetes itself. So think of us as sort of like a extension of your DevOps team or your platform operations team, and we use software and people to manage Kubernetes clusters at scale. So our free platform has hundreds of clusters running in it that we run to actually go out and run this platform, right? So we've got experience with numerous clusters, at large scale, as well as really large clusters as well. So we help companies like Juniper Networks keep a really small and lean DevOps team, because we're running their Kubernetes platforms for them, right? When something goes wrong, our software is either already detecting it and trying to self-heal and correct an issue, or we get notifications internally, and our support team will actually proactively go out and start trying to resolve issues with your clusters. And if we need your help, or we need extra access onto one of our operating systems nodes, we'll contact you and we'll work on that collaboratively to fix those problems. So it's not just, the ability to create a cluster, it's all of those day 2 operations that we help with and on top of a Kubernetes cluster, if that makes sense. Man, I'm still shocked we haven't had any questions around the details of Kubernetes. I don't even think I've seen a participant raise their hands either to chat. All right, that cluster I kicked off to build earlier, you can see is done, the AMA cluster. You can see all the nodes are here. As it's building, you can actually watch the node health itself. I selected monitoring, and I think this is a great example of actually accessing an application. I'm going to click this Grafana link, and that's going to connect to this cluster and the monitoring stack that we just deployed to it. This is actually using a proxy, right, Arun, to access this running in the cluster itself.
Yep, that's right. And it is secure and outbound. So when we talk about proxy and when we talk about or when we really show this, one of the biggest questions that we normally get is Platform 9 management plane calling into my data center or my AWS account? Actually, to that, the answer is no. The way it works is we have agents running on all the nodes, and that connects back to the management plane, and we proxy whatever we need to get from the cluster through that agent on the reverse direction. So from a technical perspective, so from a security perspective, what that means is if you, for example, turn off connectivity to the SaaS management plane that we manage, your clusters will still continue to run. It's just that we won't be able to, you won't be able to get to this Grafana dashboard that you're seeing through there.
Yeah. Apologies if people are wondering why this is taking so long. I'm using a fairly limited Wi-Fi connection today, so definitely stressing the amount of bandwidth I have using Zoom on a screen share as well. A question that I think comes up a lot with people that are getting started is also the Kubernetes dashboard. So you can access the Kubernetes dashboard exactly the same way. Click it and we'll proxy that through. But one way to I guess access applications, just as an example, if people are learning Kubernetes and trying to get started. If we go to docs.platform9.com, I can actually take you through a way to use the Kubernetes proxy directly if you're on a VPN. So you can use us to open it up, but maybe you just want to access that dashboard locally. So what you can actually use is a Kubernetes construct called the proxy, and that will expose applications that are deployed into the cluster, but that aren't necessarily using a load balancer, Ingress, or node port to allay or access those. So this set of instructions assumes that you have kubectl installed. So once you have that installed, what you can do is simply come in and say, I'm going to generate a kube config. This is going to download it locally to my node. I am on our VPN. And I'm just going to open up terminal on my Mac. And I'm going to copy kubectl proxy. And I'm going to paste that in. So now if I go to this in a new tab, I should be able to get to the Kubernetes dashboard. Oh. Let me grab this, copy link. So this is the Kubernetes dashboard that's using the proxy. The kube config I just downloaded there, uploading it, sign in, and now I have access to the Kubernetes dashboard locally as well. So you can use that platform to do a secure connection when you don't have access to a VPN to load up these resources and quickly see what's going on in the cluster or help troubleshoot. If you get on a VPN, you can use things like kube proxy to get to the Kubernetes dashboard as well. Arun, on the proxy, if someone has, say, deployed, let's continue saying WordPress, they've decided not to use a load balancer or a node port. Can they use proxy to get access to that as well?
Yep, they can, yeah. So because it proxies over to the Kubernetes control plane nodes, and from there on, it uses the first one that I was talking about, which is called the cluster IP service object. which is used for communication between the apps internally on a cluster. So essentially, this kubectl proxy is giving you a way to is going to emulate you as a client like an app within Kubernetes. So you are able to now talk to the service that you want without any of the external not south facing service objects.
Yeah. So if I'm in here, I'm looking at all my services, it's connected to the service deployment on the cluster, correct?
That's right. So dashboard, for example, is not exposed as a node port or load balancer or ingress, but you're still able to see dashboard because
here it is.
Yeah, I mean,
so
essentially what we're seeing on the UI itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we're connected to this directly using the proxy. So anyone can, yep. I guess, essentially reconstruct a URL connected to that service and access an application.
Yep.
For a new user, what would you say is the easiest way to, I guess, from our docs, we've got that published for accessing the Kubernetes dashboard. But if they had another service that was running here and they wanted to use proxy, what would be the easiest way for them to, I guess, access that?
Yeah, I guess they can start from, they can start from the link that's there in the documentation and then start replacing specific parts of the URL. One thing, if you bring up the URL maybe on a text editor or select on that, is you can see that there is so API v1 namespaces is the entry point within Kubernetes, and it points to, so what Chris did at the very beginning is he pointed at localhost 8001, which just lists out all of the API available from the Kubernetes API server. Essentially, you're talking to the Kubernetes API server at this point. Here, what you're saying is I want to access the Kubernetes dashboard namespace and a service within that, specifying the Kubernetes dashboard. That's the name of the service, and whether it's HTTP or HTTPS. You need to specify that colon after that, which is like a requirement for the proxy, and then specify a proxy after that and a hash after that. All of that is going to be same for any service. And then you specify service with a question mark and give it the namespace that you want to look into. I believe you'll still be able to get this as long as you do write up to proxy, and that service question namespace equal to all is part of the Kubernetes dashboard itself. So if you select a namespace within the Kubernetes dashboard service, you will
it'll update it.
It'll update to that namespace. Yeah.
So that means I could access. Can I access Grafana the same way?
You can, yeah.
The one we've deployed.
Yep.
So I should be able to come in here and say, all right, let's search for it. I think it's on page 1.
There should be a search box too, if I remember right.
Grafana UI?
That should be it, yeah.
So if I copy this.
Yeah, so click on that, open that up. It'll give you more details. Right, so it's in PF9 monitoring, so you'll have to change the namespace first.
So I grab this, I'm going to go back to my text editor. Well, that did things I didn't want it to do. Ah, good old material design. Copying things you don't want copied.
Yep. And then is it HTTPS? Let's look at it. I think it is. It's port 80, so it's HTTP, I believe. So let's change that to HTTP there.
And then the service name, correct?
Yep. Yeah, I think you don't need that hash either. Or If you put a hash, you need to put a slash after that. Let's try, I forget.
There we go. So this is another way that people can go in and start learning Kubernetes and start accessing things quickly and easily.
Yep.
So we have our Kubernetes dashboard as well as our Grafana dashboard. If I go back to Platform 9, both of these elements are exposed securely straight from here. So you can click this to load Grafana, or you can click this to load the Kubernetes dashboard, and it'll work exactly the same way. So this is sort of two ways to access deployments that are built into the platform.
Yeah, I forget, but I think, Chris, if you go to workloads and services, I believe we have links for all of the services too. That might be wrong.
We do. A user can come in here. This is loading across all of my clusters. You can also filter by namespace. I can say PF9 monitoring if I want to see the monitoring across all of my clusters. And if I have an external endpoint, you'll actually see it published here.
Yeah.
None of mine do. I don't have any clusters deployed right now with a load balancer and an app running within them. I focus a lot of my time on the Bare OS side. All right, we still have no questions have come in at all in any way. So I guess a little bit more on the platform itself, if you're new. The workloads tab is where you can come in and create namespaces, services, deployments, pods. If you're trying to troubleshoot what's going on with a deployment, let's say this is Portworx backup, it's in a pending state. You can actually click View Container Logs, and we're going to go and pull those logs for you, so you can quickly see what's going on. So that's a pretty short pod log dashboard for metric server there as well. So a very quick way to sort of come in and start troubleshooting. My Portworx deployment is clearly not happy. It's probably because I started with the required 3 nodes and now it's a 2-node cluster, which will break the quorum in their etcd as well as what's required for their platform to work as well. So that's a good thing to always be aware of when you're operating storage within your clusters as well. Let's see, my upgrade finished. This upgrade ran and it did a minor upgrade to my cluster as well. So that's another thing, right? All we did there was click upgrade. It's gone through and upgraded that cluster, and it's come back completely healthy. And all the apps that were deployed on there are also operating as expected as well. Are there any questions that have come through in Slack, guys? I don't have that. I don't have that up. I'm going to take the silence.
Slack.
Eli?
Yeah. No, nothing from Slack currently.
All right. I think with that, if there's no other questions, no one wants to unmute and ask anything, I think we can wrap up. We run these every 2 weeks, so if you are, if you just dialed in to sort of see what this is all about, there'll be another AMA session in 2 weeks. I think we're going to spend a little more time getting into the app catalog, maybe even go through a hands-on on deploying Ingress, deploying an app, and then connecting the two together to really demonstrate how to access applications within a cluster. Just to recap today, what we did is, I'm on a VPN. So we built a cluster, showed how you can get the kube config, how you can access the monitoring we deploy, how you can do that securely remotely, and also a neat little trick using the Kubernetes Proxy that's built into every Kubernetes cluster to expose a service that's internal to the cluster and access it externally as well. So if you're getting started and you want to go through that again, the document on how to do that is here on our doc site, and you can follow the same process that we went through for constructing this URL to access anything that's running within your cluster. So with that, we shall wrap. I'm going to click stop share. Thank you all for your time and your questions. If you want to learn more, please reach out on Slack or there's a chat bot, and our team is available through there as well online too. So thank you all for your time, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much, Chris. Please do also join the conversation with us at community.platform9.com. That'll be your venue for support for the free tier product as well as Slack.
And thanks everyone, and enjoy the rest of the week.
Thank you.